I'll give you $100 million if you beat me." The words hung in the air like a promise from heaven. The whole park went silent. 40 people stood frozen, their phones pointed at a chessboard where an 11-year-old barefoot boy sat across from one of the richest men in Los Angeles. Marcus Chen's hands trembled as he moved his final piece. "Checkmate," he whispered. The crowd exploded. People were screaming, crying, hugging strangers. This poor kid, this brilliant, brave kid, had just won $100 million. And then the billionaire stood up, brushed off his $1,000 suit, and said 5 words that would break the internet. "I'm not paying you anything. But let me back up. Let me tell you how we got here. Because this story, it's about so much more than chess. It started with broken pieces. Marcus Chen was walking through the rich part of Los Angeles, through streets where he didn't belong, carrying the only thing in the world that truly mattered to him. A wooden chess set. Not a fancy one from a store. This one was hand-carved by his grandfather during the last 3 months of his life. Every piece told a story. The king with the slightly crooked crown. The queen with the delicate details. And Marcus's favorite, the knight. His grandfather had spent 5 whole days carving that knight, getting every curve perfect. "Knights are special, Marcus," his grandpa used to say, his eyes twinkling. "They jump over obstacles. Just like you're going to jump over every obstacle life throws at you." That was 8 months ago, before the heart attack took his grandfather away. Before everything fell apart. Now Marcus was 11 years old, walking barefoot because the shoes his mom bought had fallen apart, and there was no money for new ones. He'd learned to walk on hot pavement, develop thick skin on his feet. At first, he was ashamed. Now, it was just his reality. He was studying a chess puzzle in his notebook, not paying attention to where he was going when it happened. A man in an expensive suit rushed past without looking. His briefcase slammed into Marcus's hands. The chess set went flying. Time seemed to slow down. Marcus watched his grandfather's pieces explode across the sidewalk like shattered dreams. The king rolled into a dirty puddle. The queen split in half against the concrete. Pawns scattered everywhere. And the knight? The beautiful knight his grandfather had spent 5 days perfecting? Its head completely separated from its body. "Move it, kid," the man shouted over his shoulder, not even stopping. "You're blocking the walkway." To him, Marcus was invisible. Just another poor kid cluttering up the nice part of the city. Marcus stood there, hands still frozen in the air, exactly where they'd been when holding his most precious possession. And then the tears came. Not because his knees were scraped. Not because people were staring. But because this chess set was the last thing his grandfather had touched. The last proof that George Chun had existed, had mattered, had loved his grandson. "Oh, sweetheart." Mrs. Rodriguez's voice cut through his grief. She was 70 years old with arthritic knees, but she knelt down beside him anyway. She sold newspapers from a cart by the fountain, and she'd known Marcus's grandfather well. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Rodriguez," Marcus whispered, wiping his face with dirty hands. "I should have been paying attention. You've got nothing to apologize for, baby." That man didn't even look where he was going. Didn't even stop to see who he hurt. Together, they gathered the pieces. Each one felt heavy with memory. When they sat down on the bench, the same bench where Marcus's grandfather used to play, Mrs. Rodriguez pulled out something wrapped in brown paper. "Look what I bought today," she said, unwrapping it. "A small bottle of strong glue. Figured you might need to repair a piece sooner or later." Marcus took it with shaking hands. "This must have cost." "Exactly what it was worth," she interrupted firmly. "Now let's fix these pieces." They worked in silence. The knight got its head back, though you could see the glue line clearly. Some pawns recovered their broken corners. It wasn't perfect, but it was functional. Like this knight, Mrs. Rodriguez held up the repaired piece to the afternoon light. "We all have scars. But scars just prove we survived something that could have destroyed us." Marcus carefully set up his board on the old cardboard he always used. The board itself was hand-painted by his grandfather. They couldn't afford a real one. Some squares were faded from sun and rain, from hundreds of afternoons in this park. "You think anyone will play today?" Marcus asked. Mrs. Rodriguez winked. "There's always someone willing to face the Beverly Gardens Park champion." She was right. In the 3 years since Grandpa died, Marcus had played hundreds of games in this park. Construction workers on lunch breaks. Office workers. College students who thought beating a kid would be easy. He'd only lost 3 times, and always to much older, experienced players. This park was his academy. His tournament. His whole world. What Marcus didn't know was that 2 blocks away, something was heading his way that would change everything. A black Mercedes was moving slowly through traffic, completely out of place in this neighborhood. Inside sat Richard Montgomery, one of the richest real estate developers in Los Angeles. His buildings transformed entire neighborhoods. His deals moved millions every single day. He was staring at a message on his phone. Beverly Gardens Park near the fountain. Look for the kid with the board. Beat him at chess, you win. Lose, you lose everything. Master Torres. Richard frowned, looking out his tinted window at the deteriorating streets. You sure this is right, Catherine? He asked his assistant. Master Torres was very specific, Mr. Montgomery. This had to be a joke. Richard was being sent to play chess in a rundown park? But the stakes were real. $100 million in property rights. Land Richard had been trying to acquire for years. All he had to do was beat whoever Master Torres had identified as the city's best player. The car stopped. Richard looked through the window and almost laughed out loud. There, by the third bench, sat a barefoot 11-year-old boy arranging chess pieces on a board that looked homemade. That's him, Richard said. The city's best player is a kid? He stepped out of the car. His Italian shoes hit the broken pavement. His designer suit gleamed in the sun. His watch cost more than everything within 3 blocks combined. People turned to stare. He looked like an alien landing in their world. Marcus looked up. Their eyes met. The barefoot boy in patched clothes and the immaculate millionaire. 2 completely different worlds, sharing the same space. Excuse me, Richard approached, his voice dripping with superiority. Do you play chess? Yes, sir, Marcus answered carefully. Are you any good? Marcus hesitated. Grandpa taught him to be humble, but also not to lie. I'm pretty good, sir. Richard laughed. Pretty good. How modest. He turned to Catherine. This is what Crawford wants me to play against. This kid. Mrs. Rodriguez stepped forward, her voice respectful but firm. Mr. Montgomery. What brings you to our neighborhood? Richard barely looked at her. Business. I was told I'd find a good chess player here. You found the best. Mrs. Rodriguez put a protective hand on Marcus's shoulder. My boy here hasn't lost a game in months. Your boy? Richard looked at Marcus with new interest, but not the kind that felt good. It was the look you give something curious, not something valuable. How old are you? 11, sir. 11 years old. Richard smiled slowly. Perfect. Then I won't feel bad when I win. He sat down without being invited, moving like someone used to the world adjusting to him. Never the other way around. Let's play. But this board is unacceptable. Catherine, bring mine from the car. That's not necessary, sir, Marcus said quickly. This board works fine. I wasn't asking your opinion, kid. The words came out casual, but they cut like a knife. If we're going to play, we'll use a proper board. Not this craftsmanship. The word craftsmanship sounded like an insult. Marcus felt it like a punch. Grandpa had spent weeks making that board, painting each square carefully, creating something beautiful because they couldn't afford to buy one. Catherine returned carrying a polished wooden board with marble pieces. It was gorgeous, professional, probably worth more than everything Marcus's family owned combined. She placed it between them. The contrast was brutal. The elegant board on top of Marcus's dirty cardboard. The marble pieces next to the handmade set now pushed aside like trash. Much better, Richard said, arranging his pieces with precise movements. Now, before we start, let's make this interesting. Do you have anything to bet, kid? Marcus looked at Mrs. Rodriguez, confused. He's got nothing to bet, Mr. Montgomery, the old woman said firmly. He's just a child. Then there's no game. Richard started to stand. I don't play without stakes. Not worth my time. Wait. The word came out of Marcus before he could stop it. What do you want to bet? Richard studied him like a predator evaluating prey. Then his phone buzzed. A text from Master Torres. Make it worth your while. If he beats you, pay him what that property's worth to you. Richard smiled cruelly. The kid would never win. This would be entertaining. Tell you what, kid. Since you're so confident, let's make this real. He leaned back, arms crossed. If I win, you admit in front of everyone here that you're not as good as you think. That barefoot kids from poor neighborhoods don't belong in the same world as people like me. The words hit like a slap. People in the growing crowd gasped. And if I win? Marcus's voice trembled. Richard laughed loudly. If you win, if by some impossible miracle you beat me, I'll give you $100 million. The park went silent. Someone dropped their coffee cup. It shattered, but nobody noticed. What? Marcus whispered. You heard me. 100 million. Cash. Richard pulled out his phone. Catherine, prepare a contract. Witnessed and recorded. When I beat this kid, I want it documented. Sir, are you certain? Catherine began. Do it, Richard snapped. Mrs. Rodriguez grabbed Marcus's shoulder. Baby, you don't have to. I accept, Marcus said clearly. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it. $100 million. His mom would never have to clean another toilet. His dad could get the surgery he needed. They could have a real home. Catherine typed on her tablet, then showed it to both players. This constitutes an agreement witnessed by. She looked at the crowd, which had grown to about 40 people, all recording. Approximately 40 witnesses. Mr. Richard Montgomery agrees to pay Marcus Chin $100 million if Marcus wins this chess match. Both signed on the screen. The crowd buzzed with excitement and disbelief. This was insane. This was impossible. This was about to go viral. Your move, kid, Richard said with a smirk. Let's get this over with. Marcus moved his pawn. E4. The king's pawn opening. Grandpa's favorite. The game began. For the first 10 moves, Richard played with easy confidence, barely thinking. He was good. Marcus could tell immediately. Better than most opponents in the park. The man had training, experience. He probably played in corporate tournaments. But by move 15, something changed. Richard's smirk faded. He was thinking longer between moves. His fingers drummed on the bench nervously. Ethan was playing combinations he'd never seen before. Moves that seemed to come from nowhere. The crowd went completely silent, watching like it was a religious ceremony. Move 20. Marcus sacrificed his bishop. Mistake, Richard muttered, taking the piece. But his hand trembled. Move 21. Marcus's knight jumped. That weird L-shaped move Grandpa taught him to love. The move that jumps over obstacles. Move 22. Marcus's queen slid into position. Richard stared at the board. His face went pale. He saw it now. The trap. The beautiful, impossible trap that had been building for 12 moves. No matter what he did, he was finished. This isn't, Richard's voice cracked. Check, Marcus said softly. Richard's king moved. The only legal move available. Check, Marcus repeated. His rook this time. Richard's king moved again. Boxed in. Nowhere to run. Checkmate, Marcus whispered. The park exploded with joy. People screaming, crying, jumping, hugging strangers. Mrs. Rodriguez had both hands over her mouth, tears streaming. Phones were recording everything. Marcus sat frozen, staring at the board. He'd won. He'd actually beaten one of the richest men in Los Angeles. For $100 million. Richard stared at the board like it had betrayed him. His face went through shock, disbelief, then something ugly. Rage. Mr. Montgomery, Catherine said quietly. The contract. Shut up, Richard snapped. He stood abruptly, knocking the marble board over. Pieces scattered across the bench. This is ridiculous. I'm not paying $100 million to a street kid based on a game in a park. The celebration died instantly. But you signed, Marcus said, his voice small and broken. Everyone saw. It's on video. You think I care about videos? Richard's voice was ice cold now. You think any judge will enforce a contract with a child? You're 11 years old. You can't even legally sign a document. But you said. I said a lot of things. Doesn't mean I have to pay. Richard straightened his tie. Catherine, we're leaving. And if anyone posts those videos online, my lawyers will bury them in lawsuits. You can't do this. Mrs. Rodriguez stepped forward, shaking with fury. You made a promise in front of all these people. Watch me, Richard said flatly. He looked at Marcus with cold contempt. Let this be a lesson, kid. The world isn't fair. People like me make promises to people like you and break them because we can. That's how power works. He turned to walk away. My grandfather was right about people like you, Marcus said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Tears streamed down his face now, but his voice was steady. He said some people get so rich they forget they're human, that they stop seeing other people as real. I didn't believe him. I thought if I was good enough, if I worked hard enough, people would keep their word. Richard stopped walking but didn't turn around. You're not just breaking a promise, Marcus continued. You're telling every kid like me that we don't matter. That our talent doesn't matter. That we can do everything right and still lose because people like you decide we're not worth keeping promises to. The crowd was silent. Every word was being recorded by 40 phones. Richard turned slowly. You're right, I am telling you that. Because it's the truth. Welcome to the real world, kid. He walked to his Mercedes without looking back. The car drove away. Marcus stood there, surrounded by people who'd witnessed everything, holding his broken chest set and a broken promise. Mrs. Rodriguez pulled him into a hug. Oh, baby. I'm so sorry. So sorry. But Marcus couldn't cry anymore. He felt empty. He'd done everything right. Played perfectly. Won fairly. And it hadn't mattered. Someone in the crowd spoke up. I got the whole thing on video. Every second. That man can't hide from this. Me too, said another voice. I'm posting this right now, someone else said. The whole city needs to see what he did. Within minutes, the videos were uploading. Spreading. Going viral. But Marcus didn't know that yet. All he knew was that he'd won the game and lost everything anyway. He picked up his grandfather's broken knight and held it against his chest. I'm sorry, Grandpa, he whispered. I tried. I really tried. Mrs. Rodriguez looked at the crowd, at the phones still recording, at the anger on people's faces. She didn't know it yet, but the war had just begun. Richard Montgomery thought he could walk away from this. He was about to learn he was very, very wrong. The video hit 1 million views in 3 hours. Let that sink in for a moment. 1 million people watched an 11-year-old boy get his heart broken by a billionaire who couldn't keep his word. And those million people? They got angry. Elena Chun was on her knees scrubbing the bathroom floor of a Wall Street law firm when her phone started buzzing. Once. Twice. 10 times. 20. 50 messages in minutes. She ignored it at first. Her boss had made it crystal clear. Personal calls during work meant you're fired. But the buzzing wouldn't stop. Finally, during her 5-minute break, she checked. The first message was from a number she didn't recognize. Is this Marcus Chen's mother? You need to see this. Elena's hands were shaking as she pressed play on the video link. The bucket of dirty mop water beside her sat forgotten. There was her son, her beautiful, brilliant boy, sitting at a chessboard in his patched jeans, his bare feet dusty from walking city streets. And across from him sat Richard Montgomery, a man whose face appeared on billboards advertising luxury developments she'd never be able to afford. She watched her son play with the focus of a grandmaster. She watched him win. She watched the crowd explode in celebration. And then she watched Richard Montgomery refuse to pay. The phone slipped from Elena's wet hands and clattered on the tile floor. She could only hear one thing. Her son's voice breaking as he said, I'm sorry, Grandpa. I tried. Mrs. Chun. Her supervisor's sharp voice cut through the fog. Your break ended 2 minutes ago. Get back to work. Elena looked at the woman who'd never learned her first name in 3 years of employment. The woman who'd made her work through a fever last month, because cleaning doesn't require being healthy. I have to go, Elena said, already pulling off her rubber gloves. If you leave now, you're fired. Elena looked at her for a long moment. Then she said the most liberating words of her life. Then I'm fired. She ran. Across town, James Chun was selling newspapers at a subway entrance, his back screaming with every bend. The surgery he needed cost more than the family could save in 5 years. So he stood there 12 hours a day, calling out headlines to people who walked past like he was invisible. His phone rang. James, where are you? Elena's voice was frantic, breathless. 42nd Street Station. What's wrong? Is Marcus? He's fine. James, you need to see this. Our son just beat Richard Montgomery at chess for $100 million. And Montgomery won't pay. James thought he'd misheard. What? I'm sending you the video. Watch it, then meet me at the park. Now. James watched it once. Twice. 3 times. By the 3rd viewing, tears were running down his face. His son, his brilliant, beautiful son, had done the impossible. And the world had broken its promise anyway. A businessman walking past stopped. Hey, you're that kid's dad, aren't you? From the video. James looked up, startled. That's messed up what Montgomery did, the man continued. I shared it with everyone I know. That guy's going to pay for breaking his word. Before James could respond, the man walked away. But others were stopping now. Pointing. Whispering. People recognized him. The video was everywhere. Back in the park, Marcus sat on the bench where he'd played thousands of games, feeling hollowed out and numb. Mrs. Rodriguez knelt beside him. Baby, you stay right here. This isn't over. People kept approaching. Strangers, some crying, some angry. All of them had seen the video. You were robbed, kid. My daughter's your age. What he did to you made me sick. I'm a lawyer. Pro bono. You call me. Business cards piled up on the bench beside him. Offers of help from people whose faces he'd never seen an hour ago. Then the news vans arrived. 3 local stations. Then a national network. A reporter approached, microphone extended. Marcus Chin? I'm Jennifer Park from News 7. Can I ask you a few questions? Marcus looked at Mrs. Rodriguez, who nodded gently. How do you feel right now? Jennifer asked softly. Confused, Marcus said honestly. I won fair. Everyone saw. I don't understand why winning doesn't matter. What would you say to Mr. Montgomery if he was here? Marcus thought carefully. Grandpa always said anger was like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. I'd ask him if his word means anything, Marcus said quietly. Because my grandpa taught me that a person is only as good as their promises. And if promises don't mean anything when you're rich, then what's the point of being rich? The question hung in the air. Simple. Devastating. Unanswerable. Jennifer's eyes were wet. She wasn't the only one. The cameraman was wiping his face. The interview went live. Within minutes, it was being shared across every platform. Elena arrived running, still wearing her cleaning uniform. She pushed through the crowd and grabbed Marcus, pulling him into a fierce hug. Baby, are you okay? Are you hurt? I'm fine, Mom. Marcus's voice broke. I won. I really won. And he's still. I know, sweetheart. I know. James arrived moments later, limping heavily. The run from the subway had aggravated his back, but he didn't care. He wrapped his arms around his wife and son. I'm so proud of you, James whispered into Marcus's hair. So incredibly proud. But it didn't matter, Marcus sobbed. Real sobs now, the kind that come from somewhere deep. I did everything right, and it didn't matter. It matters, James said firmly. You showed the whole city what you're made of. What our family is made of. That matters more than money. Does it? Marcus pulled back, looking at his father with red eyes. Mom just lost her job coming here. Your back is getting worse every day. We still live in one room. What does it matter if I'm good at chess if nothing changes? The question broke James's heart because he didn't have an answer. But Mrs. Rodriguez did. Baby, she said, kneeling in front of Marcus despite her protesting knees. Your grandpa used to say something I never understood until today. He said, the most important victories are the ones that happen after you think you've lost. I don't understand. She pointed to the cameras, to the crowd, to the phones all recording. Right now, millions of people are watching what happened to you. And they're angry. Not just for you. For every time they've been cheated. Every time someone with power broke a promise to someone without it. She took his hands. You didn't just win a chess game today. You started something bigger. Something that scares people like Richard Montgomery because they can't control it. As if on cue, someone in the crowd shouted, It's trending. #Justice for Marcus is trending nationwide. Another voice. Montgomery's company stock dropped 4% in the last hour. His business partners are releasing statements distancing themselves. The information flowed through the crowd like electricity. The video had exploded beyond anything anyone expected. It wasn't just Los Angeles anymore. It was national. International. A well-dressed woman pushed through the crowd. Mr. and Mrs. Chin? I'm Patricia Morgan, attorney at Morgan & Associates. I've been following this situation, and I'd like to offer my services pro bono. What Mr. Montgomery did was legally actionable. We can't afford, Elena started. Pro bono means free, Patricia interrupted gently. I'm offering because what happened to your son is unconscionable. And because I have a daughter his age who deserves to live in a world where promises matter. Before Elena could respond, another person stepped forward. I'm David Kumar. I run a tech startup. I'd like to donate $20,000 to the Chin family. Today. No strings. I'll match that, someone else called out. Me too. Within 5 minutes, strangers had pledged over $200,000. Elena couldn't breathe. This wasn't real. This couldn't be happening. But it was. Her phone buzzed. An email from someone named Elena Torres. The subject line. About your son's extraordinary talent. She opened it. Mrs. Chun, I am the one who arranged today's match. I've been watching Marcus play for 2 years. Your son is a genuine prodigy. I set up this situation knowing Richard would likely break his promise. I needed the world to see both Marcus's talent and Montgomery's character. I apologize for the pain this caused, but I believe what happens next will change your family's life. We should meet. Master Elena Torres, International Chess Federation. Elena showed James the email. They both stared at it, trying to process. She planned this, James whispered. She set up Marcus to be humiliated. No, Mrs. Rodriguez said, reading over their shoulders. She set up Montgomery to be exposed. Big difference. That night, Richard Montgomery sat alone in his penthouse overlooking the city. He hadn't slept. Couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that kid's face. Marcus Chun, 11 years old, barefoot, holding that broken chess piece like it was made of gold. His phone had exploded with angry calls. Investors. Partners. Board members. His lawyers told him there was no legal way out. The video was airtight. The witnesses too numerous. The public outrage too intense. And for the first time in his life, Richard Montgomery realized something terrifying. He'd won every battle in his life by having more money, more power, more connections than anyone else. But you can't buy your way out of being hated by everyone. His laptop was open, frozen on a news article. Billionaire breaks promise to struggling chess prodigy. The heartbreak heard round the world. Twitter was even worse. Hashtag justice for Marcus. Hashtag Montgomery pays. Hashtag keep your word. 50 million tweets. His company's social media had been bombarded so badly they'd disabled comments. Catherine, his assistant, appeared in the doorway. She'd let herself in. You should see what they're saying about you, she said. It's brutal. I don't want to know. Too bad. Catherine sat down uninvited. Your board called an emergency meeting for tomorrow. 3 major investors pulled out. The city council is reviewing every permit you have. And, she paused, your mother called. That made Richard turn. My mother? She's in Florida. Saw the video. She said, and I quote, "Tell my son I didn't raise him to be a liar and a bully." Then she hung up. The words hit harder than any business loss. His mother, Rosa Montgomery, who'd worked as a seamstress for 30 years to put him through school, who taught him that a handshake meant something, that your word was your bond. When had he forgotten that? There's more, Catherine continued. Master Torres released a statement. She admitted she orchestrated the whole thing, said she's been watching Marcus for 2 years, knew he was a prodigy, and set up the match specifically to expose you. Expose me? Her exact words. Richard Montgomery needed to be reminded that wealth without integrity is just expensive emptiness. Richard laughed bitterly. So this was a setup from the beginning. Does that make you feel better? Catherine challenged. That you were manipulated into showing the world who you really are? Richard stood, walking to the window. Down below, the city lights blurred through his vision. Somewhere in this city, that kid was probably sleeping on a mattress on the floor in a single room he shared with his parents. And Richard was standing in a penthouse that cost more per month than most people made in a year. What do I do? He asked. The question surprised him as much as Catherine. You already know what you have to do. I can't just hand $100 million to an 11-year-old. Why not? You were willing to risk it when you thought you'd win. That was different. I didn't think I'd actually lose. So you only keep promises when losing is impossible? Catherine stood, gathering her things. I've worked for you for 8 years, Richard. I've watched you build an empire. I've admired your business sense, your strategy, your vision. But tonight, I'm ashamed to work for you. The word stung. If you don't fix this, Catherine continued, you're not the man I thought you were. And I can't work for someone I don't respect. After she left, Richard sat in the dark for a long time. His phone buzzed. An email from his lawyer. Your position is extremely weak. If they sue, you'll likely lose. Court costs and reputational damage could far exceed the $100 million. My advice, settle immediately. Richard pulled up the video again. The one that had been viewed 50 million times. This time, he didn't watch himself. He watched Marcus. The way the boy's hands trembled when he made his moves. The careful precision with which he handled the pieces. The moment of pure joy when he won. 3 seconds of happiness before Richard crushed it. And then that speech. That devastating question. If promises don't mean anything when you're rich, then what's the point of being rich? Richard had spent 20 years answering that question with more money, bigger buildings, greater power. But sitting alone at 3 a.m, watching himself destroy a child's dreams, he realized he'd been answering it wrong the whole time. His phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Montgomery? A woman's voice, older, authoritative. This is Master Elena Torres. I believe we need to talk. You've got some nerve calling me. I gave you an opportunity. What you did with it was entirely your choice. Tomorrow at noon, there's a press conference. The Chun family will announce their intention to sue you. But if you show up, publicly apologize, and announce you're honoring the contract, the lawsuit disappears. More importantly, you get to explain why you initially refused. Tell your story about your father, about how you built your empire, about how you lost your way. People might understand. They might even forgive. Why do you care what happens to me? I don't particularly, Torres said honestly. But I care what happens to Marcus. That child has a gift that comes along once in a generation. But right now he's crushed. He needs to see that doing the right thing matters. That integrity wins eventually. You're supposed to be a man who keeps his word. Everything else is just details. After she hung up, Richard sat with the phone in his hand. Then he opened his laptop and typed an email to his assistant. Prepare a certified check for $100 million payable to Marcus Chun. Have it ready by 11 tomorrow morning. He hit send before he could change his mind. The press conference was packed. Over 200 people crowded into the community center. News cameras lined the walls. Reporters filled every seat. And in the front row, looking small and overwhelmed, sat Marcus Chun between his parents. He was wearing the only clean shirt he owned. His feet were still bare. He's not coming, Elena whispered to James. It's almost noon. Then a murmur rippled through the crowd. Richard Montgomery had entered through the side door. He looked different. No designer suit. Just dark slacks and a white shirt. No expensive watch. His hair wasn't perfectly styled. He looked like a man who hadn't slept, who'd spent the night wrestling with demons. The room fell silent as Richard walked to the front. He stopped 3 feet from where Marcus sat. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Marcus, Richard said finally. His voice cracked. I owe you an apology. He knelt down, bringing himself to eye level with the boy. 2 nights ago, I made you a promise. In front of witnesses, on camera, in writing. And when you won, when you beat me fairly brilliantly, I broke that promise. Richard paused, collecting himself. I told myself it was because you were just a kid, that the bet wasn't legally binding. But the truth is simpler and uglier than that. I broke my promise because I could. Because I've spent 20 years believing that power means never having to face consequences. The room was so quiet you could hear people breathing. My father died when I was 12, Richard continued. Construction accident. Safety equipment failure. The company paid my mother barely enough to bury him. I swore then I'd never be powerless like he was. His voice dropped. But somewhere along the way, I became the person who makes other people powerless. I became exactly what I hated. Elena's hand found James's. They were both crying silently. Marcus, you asked me a question I haven't been able to stop thinking about. You asked, if promises don't mean anything when you're rich, what's the point of being rich? Richard smiled sadly. I didn't have an answer then. I'm not sure I have a good one now. But I know what the answer isn't. The point of wealth isn't to escape being human. It's not to stop having to keep your word. He pulled out an envelope and opened it. A certified check. $100 million. People gasped. Cameras zoomed in. This is yours, Richard said, extending it toward Marcus. You won it fair and square. But more than that, his voice broke completely now. You taught me something I'd forgotten. That dignity has nothing to do with bank accounts. That an 11-year-old kid with broken chess pieces has more integrity than I've shown in a decade. Marcus stared at the check. His hands didn't move to take it. Why? He asked simply. Why now? Because everyone's watching? Because you'll lose more if you don't pay. The question was devastating in its honesty. Richard closed his eyes briefly. Honestly, both those things are true. Yes, I'm paying because the world is watching. Yes, I'm paying because my lawyer said I'd lose everything if I didn't. He opened his eyes, looking directly at Marcus. But I'm also paying because last night I watched the video of our game 50 times. And I finally saw what everyone else saw. A brilliant kid who deserved better than what I gave him. He set the check on the table in front of Marcus. I can't undo what I said. I can't take back walking away from you. All I can do is keep the promise I should have kept 2 days ago, and hope that maybe someday you'll believe that people can change. Marcus looked at his parents. Elena nodded, tears streaming. James squeezed his son's hand. Slowly, Marcus reached out and took the check. The room erupted in applause. People were standing, cheering, crying. But Marcus barely heard it. Mr. Montgomery, he said, loud enough to cut through the noise. The room quieted instantly. Can I ask you something? Anything. Will you teach me? Marcus said. Chess, I mean. You're good. Really good. I won, but it was close. And Grandpa always said you learn more from opponents who push you. He paused, his voice small. I don't have a grandpa anymore. But maybe you need to remember why you loved chess before you used it to hurt people. The offer hung in the air like something precious and fragile. Richard's eyes filled with tears. I would be honored. He extended his hand. Marcus shook it. And in that moment, with cameras recording and the world watching, something shifted. Because they'd all seen the broken promise. They'd all felt the injustice. But now they were seeing something rarer. A powerful person admitting they were wrong. A child offering forgiveness he didn't have to give. A second chance being earned, not demanded. There's one more thing, Richard said, addressing the room. The $400,000 that strangers donated to the Chin family? I'm matching it. $800,000 total, going into a foundation for children like Marcus. Kids with extraordinary talent who need support. He looked at Master Torres, who'd been standing quietly in the corner. Master Torres will run it. Every dollar will go to making sure no other brilliant kid has to play chess in a park with broken pieces because the world didn't see them. Mrs. Rodriguez stood up, applauding. Then everyone was standing again. 3 weeks later, Marcus stood in Beverly Gardens Park at the exact bench where everything had changed. But this time, he wasn't alone. Richard Montgomery sat across from him, studying the same hand-carved board he'd once dismissed. Now he handled the pieces with reverence, especially the knight with the visible glue line. Your move, Marcus said softly. They'd been meeting every Tuesday and Thursday. At first, cameras followed them everywhere. But Richard refused all interviews. This isn't a photo op. This is a debt I'm paying. Eventually, the cameras left. Now it was just two people playing chess. Check, Marcus announced. Richard smiled. I walked right into that, didn't I? You were thinking 2 moves ahead. You need to think 5. Mrs. Rodriguez approached with water bottles. She'd officially retired from selling newspapers. The foundation had hired her as community outreach director. Across the park, construction crews were building something new. A permanent chess pavilion. The George Chun Memorial Chess Center. 20 marble tables with built-in boards. Free lessons every afternoon. 40 kids had already enrolled. Elena and James arrived holding hands. James walked without limping now. The back surgery 2 weeks ago had been successful. Elena was wearing professional clothes, studying for her GED. She decided to become a social worker. Ready to go, sweetheart? Elena called. 5 more minutes, Mom. She smiled. They heard that phrase a lot lately. Checkmate, Marcus said gently. Richard laughed. I never saw it coming. You will eventually. As they packed up the pieces, a young girl approached shyly. Maybe 9 years old, wearing shoes that didn't quite fit. Excuse me, are you Marcus Chin? Yeah, Marcus said, kneeling to her level. What's your name? Rosa. I saw you on TV. You beat a billionaire at chess even though you didn't have fancy pieces. I did. My teacher says I'm good at math, but we can't afford a tutor. Rosa's voice dropped to a whisper. Does that mean I can't be good at it anyway? Marcus felt his heart break and heal simultaneously. He pulled out a foundation application card. This is for kids exactly like you. Kids who are brilliant but need help. You fill this out and we'll make sure you get a tutor. Promise. Rosa's eyes went wide. Really? Really? And you know what? Being poor doesn't make you less smart. It just means the world hasn't seen you yet. But once they do. Marcus smiled. Once they do, nothing can stop you. After Rosa ran off, Richard put his hand on Marcus's shoulder. You're doing what I should have been doing for 20 years. You're doing it now, Marcus said simply. That counts. They walked together through the park. The place where a barefoot kid once played with broken pieces, hoping someone would see him. Where a billionaire learned that wealth without integrity was just expensive emptiness. Where a promise was broken and then, against all odds, kept. The chess pavilion sign was being installed. The George Chin Memorial Chess Center. Mrs. Rodriguez wiped her eyes. He'd be so proud. He's watching, Marcus said with certainty. And he's smiling. As the sun set over Los Angeles, Marcus picked up his grandfather's chess set, broken pieces and all, and headed home. Not to a single room where 3 people shared one space, but to an apartment with windows that opened. Heat that worked. A future that finally felt possible. The pawn had reached the other side of the board. And in transforming, had transformed everyone around him. Because sometimes the smallest pieces make the biggest difference. Sometimes keeping a promise changes the world. And sometimes, just sometimes, doing the right thing matters more than being right. The broken knight with its visible glue line sat in Marcus's pocket. A reminder that scars don't mean you're worthless. They just prove you survived something that could have destroyed you. And that surviving? That's where the real victory begins.